She has an award-winning Annalee Spain Mystery series set in the 1920s Denver when the Ku Klux Klan ruled the state, and it features a young Black theologian, which is very interesting, a fan of Sherlock Holmes, solving crimes of the heart and spirit during one of Colorado's most dangerous times. But as she grapples with questions about life, love, courage, and consequence, what did the fictional detective teach the novelist about facing real life's toughest muddles and hardest puzzles? So here we go. Patricia?
I'm going to first say hello. Hello. And now I'm going to share my screen. And I'm delighted to be here with you. But I'll tell you what happened. When my first mystery came out in 2021, the first group to invite me was Colorado Pressman. And I, years ago, as a newspaper journalist, was in Colorado Pressman. And so they wanted to know, how did you go from the newsroom to novels? And they also wanted to know, why did I land in mysteries? And so I thought for them, I would put together a PowerPoint. And then some nice book clubs started to invite me to talk to them. They were mostly wine and cheese situations. And there's nothing wrong with wine and cheese situations. But the conversation never really went below the surface. And so one day I said to my husband, why don't I take the book talk to book clubs? And at that time, we were starting to meet on Zoom. It was, during the pandemic. And so have book talk, we'll travel. So I keep taking it around, and I brought a version of it tonight to share with you. And I'm especially delighted to share it with fellow writers, because we do this work and we know what it's all about. Some of you, like me, have newspaper backgrounds. Hands? You, yes. And then I did that for 1,000 years, and then I went up to Boulder for another 1,000 years and taught at the J School. And so some of you probably have teaching backgrounds too. Never did I guess when I was doing that work that I would be anywhere talking to anybody about having written mysteries, a genre that I love. I always, however, loved fiction. And remember the Thornbird? Oh, yes. So I love popular fiction. And then in high school, of course, the classics were on the reading list. Ray Bradbury, Slaughterhouse 5. I saw in the paper in the news the other day that the state of Florida has about 400 books on their banned book list, and a lot of these are some of them. They're Slaughterhouse 5.
Books on my to-be read list.
Yeah. So, Catcher in the Rye, did all of that, and Up to the Sinclair, The Jungle. 1984, Lord of the Flies, right? All of that. And then when I went to college and became a revolutionary and wore an afro, I started reading books by everything I get my hands on by African American authors, like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Ralph Ellison, one of the books, Tony K. Bambera. I don't know if anybody in this room knows her, but anyway, I was reading all of that. And then kind of worked my way into more literary fiction, Joyce Carol Oates, Willa Cather. But I confessed to working my way back to the bridges of Madison County. But there are a couple of two points that I quickly want to share that also brought me to this moment. And one happened at the Denver Post when I was a right out of J school and got my first job working on the city desk. And one day on the bulletin board, there was a notice for a job opening in the features department. And I remember standing there in that busy newsroom. And you know that phrase, little hinges open big doors. And I had a choice to make, and I decided to submit my name. And some people were saying, oh, you don't want to go up to features. You know, you'll be writing about recipes and fashion. And I thought, might not be so bad. But I went up to features at a time when long-form journalism was really hot. And we were invited. So I always say I went from writing about facts to also writing about feelings. And so we were invited to write these long Sunday page one feature stories, long narrative nonfiction that taught me at the time, I didn't see it then, but taught me that at the time that given the topic and time, that I could do a longer project like a book. And, you know, those stories would run about 2,000 words. And so what's a book chapter, you know? And so I learned early that, oh, this is something I might be able to try. The other thing that happened is that I did go up to see Boulder. The J School hired about 5 people out of the newsroom without terminal degrees. I have a master's degree in journalism, but I don't have a PhD. And neither did the others. They hired during that cycle. So we were already outliers, you know, up in Boulder. But they hired us on the tenure track. And in order to get tenure, I had to get a book published. And so I decided to write a book, Making Peace with White America. And my dean at the time said, you'll never get tenure with this book, with this time. But I ended up on the Today Show with that book. And I got tenure. And so I mention that because along the way, as I've had opportunity to talk to writers and at writing conferences, I share that example to say, if there is something that we know we just need to say, that's the thing, to sit down and write. And that certainly was the example with this book. And so those are just 2 sort of parts of the backstory that led me to the first in the Annalee Spain series, which, as Barb said, is a history mystery set in Colorado in the 1920s when the Klan ruled the state. It was a 3-book contract with a Christian publisher called Tyndale House. And so written at the intersection of faith and race, which is in 2 words describes my story. Because, and this is what I tell book clubs. I grew up under Jim Crow segregation. And when I say that, I tell my age. One time at my church, I talked to a youth group, and I was telling the children about the Jim Crow days. And one of the little boys said, "You're that old?" Because, and they're thinking that's ancient history, but it wasn't that long ago. And so this profile that I'm sharing is part of what is woven into the fabric of this little mystery series that I'm working on, which, to my surprise, has taken me into community in a way that nothing else that I've ever written has. And so here's a book club out in Douglas County. This is a group in Adams County. These ladies are part of the Black sorority that I'm a member of, the Denver chapter of Delta Sigma Theta. It was founded in 1909 at Howard University. And their book club, their chapter, gave me a nice book signing when the second of the two books came out. I think that when the author speaks, you're supposed to hold up their book. And so this is over at in Highlands at the United Methodist Church in Highlands. This is down in Colorado Springs. It's actually at the Briarwood. Is that the name of it? Barnes and Noble. Is that
Briargate.
Briargate? Thank you. Yes. This is at a high school, and this is on Zoom. All of us have done a lot of Zoom calls with book clubs. The nice people at Barnes and Noble on South Colorado Boulevard had a nice display of the books. And now there are 3 of them. And who knew, especially when I think about my history, which is not in fiction as much as I love it. When I would get invited, people would say, "How did you write this?" And I didn't know how to answer the question. I was surprised at the attention that the books have gotten. I think the first one is a fairly decent first try at this genre that we love. And but I decided to just keep at it to see what would come of this effort that I was making to make sense of the life that I was born into this country in the 50s. You've probably seen this photo of Elizabeth Eckford. She was with her friends in Little Rock trying to desegregate Little Rock High School. And then my parents, my dad's from Mississippi, my mom from North Carolina, and we grew up here. I was telling Peter, my dad moved here in 1951 with the Air Force Finance and Accounting Center. And, but every summer we would go either back to Mississippi or to North Carolina. And so I was young, but I could read. I went to Denver Public Schools. And so I saw these signs, and I wanted to drink out of the refrigerated drinking fountain, and I did not want to absorb the message that said, the Jim Crow ethos said, which was, these people count and these people don't. And the complication of that, for me, I've been Black every day in my life. That complication is something that I needed to understand. And then I wanted people to reflect with my protagonist as she tries to understand it too, while she's trying to solve a crime, a murder. So, I wanted to put to rest, I guess, those memories that I had from childhood, like the Birmingham church bombing, where the 4 little girls were killed in their Sunday school. And that's stuck with me in such remarkable ways, because I went to Sunday school every Sunday. And or until I was 5 years old, when Emmett Till was murdered in Money, Mississippi, at age 14. And then there were the white housing covenants. This one says only members of the white race can buy or hold property in this beautiful restrictive residential park. This means you'll be forever assured of desirable neighbors. Here's a sign from Park Hill. Warning, Negroes are moving into on Glencoe Street. And so I shared that because I still today hear people here in Denver who don't know that that happened. I met a woman one time, she found out I grew up in Denver, and she said, "Oh, where did you live?" And I thought, she doesn't know, she doesn't understand that redlining was real. Here's a mortgage company map. On the map, the first grade properties are in blue, grade 2, second grade are in, the first grade are in green. The second grade are in blue, third grade in yellow, and those redlined are the last residential category, and that's red. And those are the only areas where Blacks were allowed to buy a mortgage and move. Jefferson County had one of the most restrictive housing covenants on law in Colorado that said no homes, no residences can be bought or lived in by Negroes, only if they are employed and working for the owner of the property. And even today, only about 1% of the people in Jefferson County are Black. And so these things are kind of we're in the fishbowl and they're here. And I want my writing peers to have a awareness of that. A very nice writing friend, asked me to read and endorse a book set in New Mexico during the nuclear years. And there was not a single person, there's not a single Latino in the entire story. And so, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, but because of America, how is it possible to write a story, especially a mystery story, where there's not sort of a racial component somewhere, even if somebody's saying it was an all right white neighborhood because, and then you go on with the story. I'm really hoping to see more of that so we can be real about who we are and where we are, where we live and what's happened. Especially now when people say, don't read this book, don't teach, Black history, don't, all that. These are the times when we need to, in our stories, still share. So, as a little girl, I didn't know how to say, there's something wrong with this paradigm. And I can say it now, but at the time I didn't. Here I am. So I knew there were just some places where I could be safe. Here I am with my big sister at our house in Denver. And she's my sister Loretta. She's now Dr. Loretta. And I would say even then she looked like a doctor. And the disheveled child sitting next to her turned out to be the writer. And then the other place where I believe we felt safe was our church. And this is our church in Northeast Denver on 22nd and Marion Street, where the men at that time were soberly serious about life because of who they were. And here's my dad, whose demeanor was that way, not just in the world, but even at home. And then the women kept hope alive. and here's my mom. These are the women who said, basically, the world doesn't think you matter, but you matter to us, and you matter to God. So that was an interesting promise that they made that the world didn't always line up with. And so my character, who's a theologian, really struggles with her faith. She asked a lot of faith questions of herself and of God. You know, if you were so good, why is this problem so bad? And so as a person of faith, I really enjoyed wrestling with those kind of questions because I knew about stop and frisk, you know, all of that, the war on drugs during the Reagan years. Mass incarceration of Black and brown people. Michelle Alexander's written a profoundly salient book on that called The New Jim Crow. The racial history in our country has some interesting twist, like the Eisenhower interstate development. If you know anything about that and how those interstate highways near Swansea and Denver up I-70s cut in half communities of color as those interstates were built. And that didn't just happen in Denver, it happened all over the country. I was reading something today that said that was racism by design. Somebody tell me they're an engineer. And so in these Jim Crow communities, worlds, even the highway systems made a racial statement that remains today a dark cloud over communities that were impacted by it. And this is history that, as writers of mystery, everybody, I think, in America, everybody should know. I'll stop there. Thoughts, comments? Because I'm not.
So can you explain are you saying they put the highways through to split the neighborhood?
Yes. Have you ever driven in Atlanta?
Oh, yeah.
The worst in the world. And that highway system was designed to separate white people from Black people.
In Los Angeles as well. We made a TV show about it, and I'm sure I remember the name of it now. They pretty much showed what that is.
Nashville, Memphis, all over the country. My mother grew up in Durham, North Carolina. And when the highway went through the Black neighborhood at the time, which was called Haytime, the whole neighborhood was flattened to put the highway through. And so this is the backstory that helps us, I think, as writers, build those subtleties into our communities. I keep pointing to you, Pete. You're writing about Indigenous protagonists.
Right.
And when we go there, we're saying we recognize that all no matter what our documents say, that all are not created equal or living equally. And then our stories complication always makes stories better, right? Mm-hmm. And so we can, if we're willing to go there, then the stories get better. So after George Floyd was killed, and remember when the football players, the Kaepernick situation, the football players wouldn't stand for the flag, and then we were in the first season, if I can say this, of the Trump years when racism became okay again. I just remember saying, I can get stuck in this, or I can write a mystery. And so I said to my husband, what if we're, here we are isolated. I didn't even know at that point if we were vaccinated. But what if I use this time to work on this mystery story that, I want to sort of try. So I started reading, and if you know John Truby, a script doctor, he talks about how mystery writing, and you all know this, is about uncovering truth. And since crime writing is about catching the criminal, mystery writing is about uncovering truth. Not just truth about who did it, but truth about the detective. What are the detective's truths? What are her ghosts and her flaws and weaknesses, and that the writer who's willing to dig into that will satisfy their reader, because it won't just be a whodunit. It'll be a why done it and all those other things that we're trying to do.
Yeah. So how did you do your historical research? The Denver Public Library? What did you do?
I've already been reading about the Klan in Colorado, just because I was kind of interested in it. And then the library, the Denver Public Library, of course, their digital collections just have an enormous amount of great information. Remember the days of microfiche?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Is that
I did that all the time.
Is that photo from Denver?
Yeah, this is a Denver Public Library. And some of you may have already seen this photo. This is 17th Street. And you can see that from the cars, this is in the 1920s. And
That's the 1920s?
yes. And so one time I was up in at Barnes and Noble in Longmont, I think it was. And I had my table. And so a woman came in, and so I said, here's my spiel. When people come in the door, do you like mysteries? Well, everybody likes mysteries. So let me tell you about mine. So I told her, history mystery set in Colorado when the Klan ruled the state. And she just backed off and said, the Klan wasn't in Colorado. And so, and we were at a retirement dinner the other night, and I hadn't seen a woman for a long time. She said, what have you been doing? I said, you'll never believe I'm writing Christian mysteries. And in Colorado during the Klan days. And so I said, did you know about that? And she looked really puzzled. And she was trying to connect the Klan in Colorado. But every county in Colorado had a Klan. That Colorado had the second highest Klan membership per capita of any state in the country. And it's true. Yeah. And so and leaders from the governor on down, of course, reduced paying members of the Klan, including Ben Stapleton, of course, in Denver, and the police chief in Denver, and sheriffs and school boards presidents and all over the state. And here they are up above Golden. They meet every Monday night. These huge groups. This is in, of all places, Boulder, Colorado, at an induction. We think of Boulder as so-called progressive area. And this is the women who were Klan members. Walter Mosley says that these truths help us as writers take an uncomfortable look at this world that we are struggling to live in together. And if we kind of tiptoe around them or back away from them, then what we ultimately as writers are doing is cheating the story that wants to be told. And so exhausted as I have been around racial matters, what I discovered is if I will sort of need as in KNEAD, this information into the story, wow, look what happens. It gets more interesting. The things the character has to fight get more interesting for her. Robert McKee says, he quotes a literary critic in his book, as far as these stories go, that stories are equipment for reading, that we go to fiction not to escape life, but to find it. And I really needed that, hear that, you guys, because some people were saying to me, you're writing mystery novels? You know, as if that was a step down from the more serious work that I have been doing. But what I discovered is that a lot more people are willing to read, instead of wanting to read an essay that I've written about race in America, they actually prefer to read a whole book about a protagonist who's, trying to solve a crime. So that, that power of story, I loved how I sat in our backyard a whole summer when I was trying to finish the first novel, kind of marinating in these affirmations of this work that we try to do. For all of us, there are plenty other things we could be doing instead of revising, right? And writing these stories. But they matter, they change people, starting with, of course, the author. Who knew that? So, I think that.
Patricia?
Yes.
So I have a comment and then a question. I'm sure knew John Dunning. And of course, I don't know how many of you know of his book called Denver, which is set in the mid-20s, and it's all about the Klan and how it ran the city of Denver. It's really a great book to give a sense of what was going on. So the second part of that is, obviously from a dramatic writing viewpoint, where you've set your book at the Times is got a lot of rich material. But you grew out of the 50s. You obviously experienced a lot of that. Did you not toy with doing books kind of from your childhood, from your time when you were growing up? Or are you thinking about that down the road of writing books in the more recent Jim Crow years? I love doing history like all that, but I was just curious from you as a writer, if you had thought about doing something to the times when you were growing up and going through that.
Oh, I love that question, and I did think about it. And I even tried a draft of this series set sort of in that time in first person. And right away, Bruce, I thought, wait a minute, this is me speaking, and I need to get out of this. I need to get out of the way, number one. And then I really believe, although my book is not about the Klan per se in the way that John Dunning's book was, the Klan provides that great sort of background tension to that time. And so I thought this could be, a good time period. And my favorite Golden Age detective is Hercule Poirot. And so the first Hercule book was published in 1921. So I really love that era. I love the masterpiece mysteries, from that era. So that's why I settled there. But I love that question. And then if you remind me, I'll tell you about the one I am working on it's closer to my time. It's interesting to me, my friends, that even as a child, I loved the genre. And of course, for me, starting with Nancy Drew. But the genre I really have enjoyed is the clergy mystery. And that has to do with the faith questions that I've and experience that I've had my entire life. So I love G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown series, and then Grantchester, another masterpiece with a vicar who's friends with the police officer. And I love Agatha Christie's stories. My character is a fan of Sherlock Holmes because in the 20s, not many people, including her, would have known about Hercule Poirot, but everybody knew about Sherlock Holmes. So she's often, she doesn't try to solve mysteries like Sherlock, but she often thinks about a story that she has just read and something that he said that kind of informs her next steps. So I've enjoyed that. I also love history in general. And so you asked me about research. I just like sort of digging around. This is a photo taken about 1910 on Alameda Avenue Bridge by a photographer named Charles Lillibridge, whose glass, what do you call them? Negatives. Is that the right word? Have been collected by History Colorado and the Denver Public Library. They kind of co-own them. And the interesting thing about him is that he took photos that affirmed who people were just because. So at this photo, on the back, his information, it will just say, a group of bicyclers on Alameda Avenue. Now, of course, when I see them, I see, oh, wow, Black people, yeah. But it's such an interesting image for me because it is in Colorado. And when I see things like that, that says, yes, find out more. And that's then I go down that rabbit hole. That helps me from trying to be Louise Penny or Anne Cleves. I'm not. I am so far writing a Colorado mystery series. And so I can find out that there was a very deadly tramway riot in Colorado. And a group that predated the Klan, I think they were called the Good Guy Group or something like that. They and the tramway owner hired these strike breakers, and 7 people ended up getting killed in that incident. And so I focus, there's a lot to know just here. And if I focus on that, then, find a lot of things that I enjoy writing about. So I did start reading. I thought I need to find out what I'm trying to write. And I started reading all these people. I'm sure you've seen some of these titles. I loved knowing that there's something called a story beats. I did not even know that. And, James Scott Bell talks about in his books, the first one's the disturbance and there's trouble brewing. And I love one of my favorites, of course, is the doorway of no return, which is that moment where the character has to decide, am I going to go ahead or am I going to back off? And so if you remember Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but I used this example in a high school and they knew the movie. How about that?
Oh, they did. Me too, yeah.
When they're against the wall, the bad guys are going to catch it, and they have to jump off the side of the mountain. But Robert Redford doesn't want to jump, and then Paul Newman discovers he can't swim. And he's, are you crazy? The jump's going to kill you anyway. And then they jump, and they jump into this very deep ravine and water. And then you see the same kind of beat. So now that I know what it is, I see it all the time in movies. Here's A Fugitive, where, if you know that story, Harrison Ford has been cornered by Tommy Lee Jones' character. And he tells him, get on your knees. And he literally takes the position of prayer. That's how I read it anyway. But he doesn't let himself get captured, and he jumps. And so my sister, who's a licensed clinical psychologist, Dr. Elizabeth, says, and others say that, you know, at the moment that the character lands in the deep water from a jump, from a leap that should kill them, but survives, then they have shown to themselves and to those of us who are reading or watching the movie that they're now ready to take on the task of solving the crime, finding the criminal. And again, I know you all know that, but I didn't know these things. And I thought, I really like this, and I'm enjoying it. And so in book clubs, when I share that, they like learning story beats, and I tell them, once you know these beats, you'll see them all the time in movies and in books. Another thing that I never expected is how my request of my character, that she does tough things and becomes a tougher person. That what happens is that she teaches me in return that I can be tougher too. I never, ever expected that. And as you can tell, soft voice, introverted. I thought, gee, I knew that I would have done this years ago, but I really enjoyed thinking about that. How I'm learning from the character that I think I'm creating, and she's actually teaching me. So I'll close here pretty soon. Some nice things happened with that first book. Parade Magazine had it in a fall column called Mysteries We Love. And I was just stunned. I called my sister in Atlanta. I said, you know, that book I've been working on, it's in Parade Magazine. She said, Parade? She went to the store and bought 5 copies of it. And then if you know basketball, Steph Curry has a book club. He's a literary luminary in a book club called Literati, and his people picked it that year that it came out for March, which was Women's History Month. And that endorsement went a long way, as you can imagine. And then there is an organization called the Christy Awards, and it's awarded to Christian fiction. And all that, Secret was nominated for Best First Novel, and it won. Really, really a huge surprise to me. The second book won Christianity Today's Fiction Award for fiction. And then earlier this year, the New York Times Book Review gave it top billing in an article called 4 Great Fictional Detectives. And when that happened, I thought, well, maybe I'm kind of on the right path. I just, and here's another interesting thing. You're recording. Don't listen if you're, early on, there was discussion in my publishing house to not really call these Christian mysteries. The idea being that will turn away people who think this book is not for me. But when the New York Times said, I should have brought the article. But what it says at the top is that there are not a lot of articles that are not a lot of mysteries that explore religion and crime. But Patricia Raybon they said threading the needle in just the right way. And so now I can openly say it is a story because faith is a mystery. And,
Yeah. Yeah, all of us. Yes.
and so I really like that about what I'm trying to do. I like that I'm writing for a Christian publisher. The agreement, sort of unspoken agreement, is that there is no sex on the page, no cursing. And do you know, people all the time, I get emails from people that say, is there, profanity in the story? There's not. But what I dislike about that, what I like about that, is that if the people are not cursing at each other, they have to figure out what they're really trying to say. And so I really, really enjoy that. That's an understanding of the publishing home that I'm in, and readers enjoy that. Dan and I we started watching a series on Netflix called The Diplomat.
Mhm.
And every 5 words is, an expletive. And after the second episode of season 1, I said to Dan, I just can't watch this. It's not that I think I'm so, clean or something, but it was just asking too much of me to try to follow the story and climb my way over all of this, with profanity. So that's not an issue for the series that I've been writing. The best thing as I close that I've learned about this work is who my audience is, my core audience. My core audience is not this nice young lady or this nice young man. My core audience are women. And I've never thought of myself as a women's fiction writer, like Jodi Picoult. But my core audience are women who probably have a faith experience in their body. And so they get the times, they get the character, they get the context, and I can see them when they come in, like if I do a book signing or something, I can see them as they come in the door. And I've enjoyed meeting my core readers and then their friends and family. So the next book, I'm working on a World War II. I've been calling it a spy novel, but it's really a code-breaking story set at a Black finishing school in North Carolina in 1943. And so I have submitted the first draft. I got back the editorial notes. And now.
There you go.
They were good. They were very good. So this isn't the cover, but this is my avatar. This young lady. I saw this picture on Pinterest. She kind of inspires me. My character is a math teacher who takes a teaching job on probation, on a trial position at a school. She's trying to work her way up from her tobacco sharecropping roots, if you know anything about North Carolina. And she gets on a dare, gets drawn into cracking a code, and she cracks it. And then she's in a lot of, then the trouble starts. So that's what it's. So I don't have a math background or a code breaking background. So I'm learning a lot of things. Did you know that the most common letter used in English and in the Romance languages is the letter E? Yeah, just one little detail.
Is that your same publisher?
Yes. So, if you will, I know not everybody in the room shares the same faith system as mine, but I'll share just a verse, if you'll allow, that has to do with something that comes up in our world, and that is author envy. I personally know authors in Colorado who are million seller authors, and not just here, but other places. And for a long time, it was a distraction for me that other people have this level of success. And then there's the rest of us on the midlist. And this particular scripture says, yeah, but pay careful attention to your own work. And then you'll get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't have to compare yourself to anybody else. And so I think about that a lot. And I think about the joy that I'm experiencing writing, doing this writing and learning how to do it. I read something, I mentioned John Truby, he has a book on genres, and I've been reading that recently. What else have I been reading recently? Do any of you know the poet Langston Hughes, the Black poet? So he has he published a couple of memoirs, and I've been reading those. And so it doesn't feel like work. To me, what we do doesn't feel like work. And so I'm grateful for it. And here we are.